up for general sharing, so I'll hand you over to her.
Thank you. My name's Vicky, I'm an addict. And I'd like to say it's good to be here, but it's very testosterone heavy in this room. No, it is a pleasure to be asked. And I can remember when I was new and people would say it's a privilege to be able to share in Cocaine Anonymous, and I think, what are you on about? There's no way I will ever sit up at that table and tell you my story. And obviously at that point in time, I didn't really have a message to carry. I had a lot of mess to carry around with me. I loved drugs. They were the answer to a problem that I didn't understand at the time. I was always very fearful, never felt I was quite right, never felt that I fitted in, and that included in my own family. And I used to think that I had different parents somewhere else, that they just didn't want me and left me with these other parents that I didn't want. And I struggled in school. I was really shy and just didn't know how I fitted into the world. And when I discovered alcohol initially, I didn't notice that it changed the way I felt. It just made me more comfortable, more confident, and I was able to hold a conversation, and I felt I fitted in. And I had the kind of upbringing where I was taught right from wrong. I lost my mum when I was 11. She died. So I was left with a very, very overprotective father who met my stepmother very soon after my mum died, and she was just an old witch as far as I was concerned. Didn't get on with her at all, and I just had all this conflict going on. And I was taught right from wrong, but I could never do the right thing. I could manage a couple of weeks of towing the line, whether that was rules at home or rules at school. I could manage a couple of weeks, and then I'd go and do something that would upset everyone, for want of a better word. And in the end, that kind of having to live like that, trying to do the right thing, but just not being able to do it and having no idea why, I just thought, sod it. I just might as well do what I want to do. And there was a big thing, like my dad was just like, don't take drugs, don't do this, don't do that. And I'm the sort of person who say, don't do this, that and the other. I want to know why, so I'm going to try it. And also it was kind of like, I thought it was cool. I liked smoking weed, I liked going to festivals, I liked the parties. It was a long time ago that I started using. And I enjoyed it. It made me feel better. And I lived near London on the commuter belt, and you'd see all the suits going up to town, and I just think, what are you doing? What are you doing with your lives? Life's for partying. My attitude was, my mum died really young, so I needed to get as much fun as I possibly could out of life, just in case I died very young as well. And the way I was living my life, that was probably going to happen. In fact, when I hit my 40th birthday, I was quite surprised that I got there. And I was in recovery by then. And I went through all the usual progression, started off smoking dope and drinking, and that was all right. In my mind, that was okay. Everyone was doing it. But as my using progressed, my friends changed. The people that were just smoking puff and drinking were like, you're getting out of hand, because I'd take it that one step further. And as my using changed, my groups of friends changed, and I seemed to have this ability to seek out people that looked worse than I did. So therefore, I was all right. And, you know, I started drinking daily, I was smoking pot all the time, and I was taking party drugs and this, that and the other. And then heroin came in on the scene of the people that I was hanging out with. They'd all gone off to India, come back with habits. And I said I'd never ever take it, because I knew, somewhere deep down inside me, I knew I'd like it. And I did take it, because it came into the circle of people I was hanging around with, but I only took it at weekends. So therefore, drinking all week, doing heroin at the weekends, I was all right. I had a problem with neither in my mind. And eventually the heroin took over. I had jobs, I worked behind bars, There's always an alcoholic behind the bar, but it wasn't me. It was usually my manager. So my denial around what was going on was rife. And eventually the heroin took over, and it got to a point, as it does, where I thought, I can't do this anymore. You know, my life was slipping through my fingers, and I had this belief at the back of my mind that this wasn't the right way for me to be living. So I started looking for help. I went on methadone scripts, went to local detox people, and they sent me to a treatment centre, and I detoxed. I didn't think I was taking enough drugs to warrant going into treatment, but they clearly did, and that's what happened. I went into the local alcohol and drug detox and then onto the primary treatment, and I ended up coming down to Bournemouth. I'd been 6 weeks in primary, cured. I'm all right now. But they clearly wanted me to go and do another few months somewhere else. I don't know why, but it was, I'll go to Bournemouth. I've always wanted to be by the sea, so that's what I'll do. And I got to the treatment centre, and you have to sign this big list of rules that you're going to follow. Bearing in mind, I don't do rules. Anyway, I signed it. Yeah, I'll do all that. I was in an SR within a week. And he owned it. I was livid. He didn't even give me the opportunity. So I'm sitting in groups, lying, thinking I'm all right, that there's nothing wrong with me, because I'm 6 weeks clean and sober. I don't even know what I'm doing in this place. And eventually I got found out. My counsellor came and said, he's just come and told me this. And I just felt this massive feeling. I felt guilty because I'd been lying to everybody. And I felt really, really ashamed. And I'd broken the rules and I felt terrible. And he said, how do you feel? I said, I want to go and use. And that was the first inkling that I had of my behaviour would take me back to using. And from then on, I kind of towed the line. I saw the people that didn't really toe the line and were messing about, stayed in treatment a lot longer, and I wanted out as soon as I could. So I started towing the line. I had the opportunity to work through the grief that I hadn't worked through around my mum, which was quite scary because it was all nicely put in a box, and it was safe where it was, but that all came up obviously once the drugs were taken away. So I had that opportunity, and I was introduced to these rooms. I had a taste of the rooms, different fellowship, before I went into treatment, and they talked about abstinence. I was just thinking, you are joking. I'm all right with a bit of puff and a drink, but obviously, you know, I came in and I listened to all the differences. I didn't believe I was like you lot. I really, truly believed that if I could just keep to drinking and smoking pot, I'd be all right. And I got a sponsor because I like to fit in. And that's what you guys all said to do, get yourself a sponsor and work through these 12 steps. Well, I worked 1 to 5 in treatment. I got a sponsor when I left treatment. I got together with a different guy when I left treatment. Even though I was going to be a year at least on my own, and I drank and I used one night, and I went to my sponsor and I told her about it, and she said, if you don't put this relationship on the back burner, you will use again. So I got rid of the sponsor. Because you can't tell me what to do. I'm a grown-up and I'm staying in this relationship. Anyway, and I had this attitude, I'll show you who's going to use again. And he picked up socially drinking, which wasn't very social at all, I can assure you, although he has a certain amount of denial around that. I decided I would prove, and by this time I was pregnant as well, I would prove that I could socially drink. And I had to drink, and then a couple of weeks later, and a smoke. And I was pregnant, it was the end of my pregnancy, and I felt so guilty that that was enough to stop me doing it again. until after I'd had the baby. And then I got absolutely slaughtered, insulted all his friends, people I'd never met before, and didn't drink again. That was Christmas, didn't drink again till the New Year. So I was kind of playing around, and all that attempts to control, I call it, I triggered the allergy, and it was just a slow progression back. Eventually I picked up heroin again. I got him to go and get it so that I could blame him if it went wrong. Not when, because it wasn't going to go wrong. I wasn't like you lot. And that's what I proceeded to do for the next 15 months. And I was taking crack. It was horrendous. I was selling crack and gear out on the pushchair. We were getting stopped by the police every 5 minutes. I had social services involved in my life. And I can tell you, using with this programme in my head was horrendous. I could not use enough to stop that voice. In fact, the more I used, the louder the voice got. You don't need to be doing this, Vicky. You know you don't need to be doing this. But I couldn't stop. I was off and running. And I have to say, social services got involved at a time where I was ready to play their game. I was ready to play ball. I was ready to get clean, and they helped me. They helped me with childcare. They helped me get into a flat. He was in prison by this time, and they helped me no end. And I got back onto the merry-go-round. I was under this illusion I could just go in a treatment again. There's no funding down here, I can assure you. You've just come down here for treatment. There's no funding down here. You're lucky if you can get a detox, I think. So I went into the local detox, and I knew I needed to come into these rooms and get a sponsor and do what I was told. And that's what I did. My little girl was 2 years old when I came back in, so she had a rough couple of years, first couple of years of her life. And he was still using, and I wasn't ready to get rid of that relationship. You know, I worked very closely with a sponsor. I worked through the whole 12 steps because I knew I hadn't done that. You know, I was aware that I hadn't given this a fair shot. And I worked through the 12 steps, and I stuck with the women, and I had a home group. I wasn't in this fellowship. I was in a different fellowship. And eventually, after a couple of years, I'd sentenced, and it was a sentence. He wasn't allowed in the house unless he went to meetings, and he continued going to meetings. If he wanted to live under my roof with my kids, because I had another one by then, that's what he had to do. And not just because he had done, I'd go to a couple, keep her sweet, and she'd be all right. No, you keep going to meetings. And at that point in time, I wasn't working the programme every day. It talks about half measures in the book. I don't even know if I was putting quarter measures in. All I do know is I was doing just enough to stay clean with the chaos that was surrounding me, because he was still using. And he went to this meeting that has got a bit of a reputation. And he came back and he said, they said I couldn't share. I went, you what? I said, you're a newcomer, they're breaking traditions. I'd never read the traditions, so I didn't really know what I was talking about. And he said that he got this guy as his sponsor, and I was just like, oh no, seriously, you've got that man as your sponsor? Because when I remember him, he was the most self-piteous male specimen I've ever come across. Anyway, it was his birthday, and I went to the meeting because he said he was going to a meeting for his birthday, on his birthday. I didn't do that sort of thing either. Recovery did not come first for the first 2 years of my recovery. Anyway, I went to this meeting, and the guy who was sponsoring him was happy. In fact, he changed profoundly, and I was really shocked. And the message that I heard was consistent. They were happy. Now, I was all right, but I was still emotionally like this, and I was still struggling. And I went away from that meeting and I thought, am I going to stay around any length of time doing what I was doing? Which wasn't very much. I was too busy to work with newcomers because I had 2 kids and another one on the way. So you see, step one was still a bit, life was unmanageable, to say the least. Was I going to stay clean doing what I was doing? And the answer that came back to me was no, I wasn't. So I made the decision to go over to this group. My sponsor had moved up to London. I got a new sponsor. I'd read bits of the big book at this time, but not gone through it as such. She told me to read the big book. She told me to write a gratitude list. She told me to phone at least 2 new women a day. If I can't get hold of new women, then other women in the fellowship. She told me to continue to take inventory because I'd already gone through the work. Basically, she just showed me how to work this program into my life on a daily basis and to have regular contact with her. For me, I've needed to have continuous sponsorship, because if I haven't got that one person that I can talk to, because over the years I know how to do things, drinking, using, I know how to do life on my defects. I know it inside out. It can almost in a sick way be comfortable, but doing the right thing, I don't always know. It's a lot better now because I've been around quite a few years, and you know, the book promises us that we will intuitively know how to handle situations, and on the whole I can. But every now and again, or when he's annoyed me, or quite frankly when the whole family's annoyed me and I think I should do one, because just because I've been around a few years, it doesn't mean I don't struggle. I do sometimes. And I've had some really dark times in recovery where I've thought, this is not working. And it's been scary because I've felt so horrendous. But the reality is, we're only guaranteed to stay clean and sober a day at a time. Anything else we get on top of that is a bonus. And I can tell you now, even when I thought those 12 steps and those daily blooming suggestions that I was given weren't going to work, I continued to do them. Because if I'd bought into what was going on in my head, the likelihood is I wouldn't be sat here now. I wouldn't necessarily have used, I didn't want to use through that whole time, but I wanted to just do a runner, just go, and just hide somewhere or just end it. So I've gone through those times in my recovery and I've come out the other side, and I've come out the other side so much better than before. I had to up my step 11 stuff. I had to start actively seeking a bigger spiritual picture, if you like. And I can't tell you what yours is. I had to search for something that suited me, and I found that. And I continue to practice that along with my steps as a step 11 thing, not on a daily basis, and as a result I do suffer, but I do as much as I can. I work. I've got 3 children who, two of them haven't ever seen me use. They've only ever known both parents in recovery. And my life today is just as a result of getting a sponsor, doing what I was asked to do. And I know the catalogue behind me, I know I don't know how to do things the right way. The evidence is there. I've just had to follow someone else's guidance and suggestions, and I've got an amazing life. You know what? When I came here just over 13 years ago, all I wanted was to be able to stay clean. And I've been given so much more than that. So much more than that. I didn't imagine that I would have the life that I've got today, that I'm able to negotiate life, I'm able to be with normal people, so-called. I think we're more normal than they are, to be fair. You know, we're lucky to have this in our lives, really lucky. And I've managed to stay, I couldn't even get to a year. I struggled over a couple of years to get to a year. And a day at a time, putting this action in, staying accountable to my sponsor, having a home group and staying there. And believe me, there have been times where I thought, see you lot, I'm done with it. But I keep going anyway. And that thinking and that feeling passes. It always passes. And you know, and I've been able to do that for the last, I think I've been there 10 10, 11 years in the same meeting. Not consistently, but, you know, my home group's really important to me. It's where I've learnt to be early, turn up on time. I treat my boss like my sponsor. If he says to me to do something, I'll do it. I do it without argument. I might argue in my head and curse him in my head, and I certainly did with my previous boss in my previous job. She went on my inventory a lot. But I've got that inventory to cope with life. I don't have to carry that rubbish around with me. I can just write it all down and let it go. It's an amazing programme. Or if you're new, or if you're struggling, I would suggest that, you know, with particularly newcomers, get a sponsor, get a big book, do what they tell you to do, and you will, I guarantee, if you do exactly what you're supposed to do on a daily basis, you won't ever use again, and your life will get better. And as the years go on, even though it's been hard at times, as the years have gone on, it's been an amazing journey, and I wouldn't change it for anything, and I certainly don't want to go back to where I came from. I'll leave it there. Thanks for letting me share.
Thanks for a lovely share. Open the meeting up.